Welcome, everyone. This is Making Money with Data. I think I have never had anyone talk about data and money as much. And we are going to sort of cover some of these concepts. And so with respect to the course, I'm going to, I guess you guys all have this microfactoring course page, right?
Yes.
And everyone had a chance to, I guess, skim through some of the lectures or no?
I did on the module 1.
Okay, module 1. Okay,
Yes.
so I can repeat some of that thing. Okay, as we go along, maybe cover some of the important concepts. But
You're talking about the six. You're talking about the 6 videos that we were supposed to watch before the class.
yeah. So I guess
Yeah.
that is
That's a done.
okay. So that's good. So I guess what the reason is that if some of those, if anything is not clear, we can actually deep dive into this during the class. Otherwise, we just move on to some of the interesting stuff, right? So let's do some house cleaning first, okay? So there is this course introduction. I guess you guys have all gotten a chance to look at that. Let me skim through the syllabus first, okay? By the way, before we go, what is going to be required, I guess, from lecture 3 onward is a tool which you will need to install, which is from Anaconda. So I did post that link in the Slack channel. Okay, so please download that. It's a free download. Okay, so what this will enable you to do is once you actually have this downloaded, I'm not sure how many of you have ever used something called a Jupyter Notebook, right? But if you have not, it's a very very clean and very interactive way to sort of present your work and do analysis, write code, and do everything you can technically and most of the work you will be doing as far as submitting homeworks and projects and everything is going to be done in Jupyter Notebook, right? So it's a good idea to sort of play around with that and install it first. Okay, so you will see something called Anaconda installed. And then you're going to click on Jupyter Notebook. Okay. And you're going to see.
Is there a version for Mac as well, or just PC?
It works on Mac as well as PC.
Okay, thank you.
Let me know if you have never gotten a chance to use it. I can sort of help you offline if that is the case, if you have an installation issue, anything like that, right? So what you will see is,
and to test, if I can just say, there's also
yes.
in unit 3, there's also installation instructions for Mac and PC.
Good,
so it's
good,
all kind
good.
of written down, and then you can reach out to Tesh if there are any kind of further issues with it.
Perfect. So you will see something like this interface. I'm just going to give a brief overview, and there is a detailed overview of that. This is how it looks like. If you want to write something, you can write this is making money with data. Okay, and then if you want to do code, you can write x equals 3. Okay. X times X, okay, it's going to print out, okay. So you can code, you can write reports, and as we get into, I guess, the next lecture, you will see something which we will go through, okay, which is this particular notebook, which is all prepared in Jupyter Notebook, right? So you have data, you sort of ingest data, you write explanation as to what the data is about, you do some additional graphics, you can do some plotting, you can do all of these things, okay? So we're going to do that as we go along in the course, okay? So let me go back to the syllabus first. Okay, so as you know, we start off today. It's going to end on August 14. We meet 2 times a week. And there is a little bit of description here, right? So we're going to, so this course is, though this is the data analysis course, I'm going to also going to include every once in a while topics which are sort of more broader in the sense that, so for example, we're going to weave in some statistical concepts and trying to sort of design a good investment portfolio, for example, right? So this basically becomes a, you can sort of take this as a way to learn some of the skills, or you can sort of apply it directly, right? So, and we are going to bring in some risk management concepts. I think Robert Hext. Robert Hext is online.
Ron Hicks.
Ron next.
Is that Ron or Robert? Okay,
Ron. Ron or Ronald?
Ronald. Okay. Hey, I think you talked about risk management or risk analysis, which you worked in, right? So what was the context you were talking about?
I'm sorry, what are you referring to?
I think you talked about your understanding or your experience with risk management and data analysis, right? I think
in
you,
the introductory stuff.
yes, in the Slack channel, yes.
Okay. That was a company I was working for. It was a partnership between IBM, MeasureX, and Mercedes-Benz. We were building the first automated automotive factory. And we had critical delivery windows and particular talents of people that, were able to contribute best in certain areas. And it was learning their skills and applying them in the best places, and doing analysis of what parts we should focus on in the code, and what was needed by the factory people at Mercedes-Benz, what the IBM customer needed from us, and just analyzing almost on a daily basis.
Okay, so when you say risk management, are you talking about risk management from data analysis, like mean variance kind of analysis, or is this risk of a failure?
Risk of failure. We had a very tight. I was managing one particular window of the project where we had 6 weeks to produce a certain set of functionality in the code, or we would miss a $65 reinvestment from our partners.
I see.
Super critical to get it right.
So it was more like a schedule kind of risk you were talking about, right?
Yeah, it's more like.
I see. Okay. So we're going to talk about risk more in the statistical sense, right? And I'm going to, since you brought up risk, and I think there were a couple of more instances where people talked about risk, I'm going to sort of design a module which just focuses on a statistical way of approaching risk, okay? But before going there, okay, so we are going to cover some of these topics, and we're going to start off with some stats fundamentals, okay? We're going to cover statistical significance, confidence intervals, random variables, variance, covariance, and all those things. So these are all elementary concepts which you would need throughout the course, as well as when we actually get into the predictive analytics part, okay, towards the later stages of the course, okay. Of course, we are going to use Python as a tool to do a lot of this work, okay, especially pandas, okay. We're going to go through NumPy as well as pandas, then we're going to go through data frames and all those things, right? And so this is a brief sort of overview of what different parts of the course are going to cover, okay? And the rest of the stuff is a little bit of house cleaning in the sense that, of course, honesty and late work and everything is going to be important. Okay. The most important thing, okay, so the first 2 weeks we are going to have this basic Python review kind of an assignment. So by the end of next week, you will have to sort of, to get graded on that, you will have to submit an email of a snapshot of the fact that you completed this course, which is, I think, yeah, right here. Okay, so you can start off here. It's a Code Academy, I guess, coursework. It's in Python 2, which is not any different than what you will be using in the Anaconda install. It's just a different format, right? So just go through this. I think for some of you, it's going to be pretty quick. For the rest, it might take a little bit of time, but I think it's important to sort of get to a point where instead of wasting time trying to sort of learn and relearn some of this different data structures and all in Python, the built-in data structures, I think it's best to sort of get your hands dirty to a point where you can start working with data. Okay, and that's what we are going to start off in week 3. Okay. So we're going to have homework. The final, there's going to be a project towards the end. If I go back to the syllabus, so 50% of the grade is going to be homework assignments, which is going to be every week. Of course, class participation is going to be 20%. This class participation also includes our interactions on Slack, and we'll try to sort of see as to how we can sort of assess that. And of course, final project, okay, which is 30% of the grade, okay. The project is pretty open-ended. So I'm going to give you some flavors of how I use this kind of skills at my work, okay. So I work at a company called Renaissance Electronics. I am a director of engineering. I manage a team of around 8 engineers who do heavy-duty design work, okay. And when I say design, we are talking about building hardware products, right? So the design involves electromagnetic design, thermal design, mechanical design, manufacturing. So every aspect of taking a product from design to concept, to design to production, right? So, apart from doing that work, I sort of look around my immediate work, I guess, projects, and see as to where I can use data to make things better. Okay, so hold on, let me see. I got some chat. Okay, I guess there is someone asking Matt. Matt, are you online?
Yes.
Yeah, someone is not able to log into this course.
Sorry, they're not able to log into the meeting or the course.
I'm not able to open this course on Slack, is what he's trying to say. I don't think he has to be on Slack, right? He has to be.
Okay, no, he's messaging me, so I'll deal with this and not bog down the meeting.
Okay, perfect. Okay. Where was I? Okay, so in terms of how I use it, okay, so I guess this is going to be a more open-ended course, and we're not going to be cover everything with respect to data science, data analytics, right? And that's why there is project. So if you are working in an environment where you have a data set to work with, right? And it could be anything, any small data set, anything which you can use the data to solve a problem at your work. you can use that as a part of that project, okay? And that will be an ideal project, because not only will it give you some, you would already have a pre-built understanding of what the data is about. You would all, so pretty much what we do, right? You need to have some understanding of what problem, what questions you're trying to answer from data, right? What are you trying to do? How are you going to make an operation better? How are you going to reduce costs? How are you going to improve margins, right? So how are you going to improve a design, right? So there is a goal, and you're going to try to sort of find out as to whether you can use data to address that goal, right? To meet that goal, okay? And that's what, so I'm going to give you some flavors as to how I use it, right? So by the way, I write here, it's a little stale. I am trying to, after this quarter is over, it's my goal to sort of spruce up and update a lot of my recent writings. So the last one I wrote was in 2019. I have a bunch of write-ups which I haven't published yet, but I have it in the pipeline to sort of publish, okay? So this is my site, which you can see that it's that same guy here, right? And by the way, let me know if there is any question, if you have anything you want to sort of bring up, or any questions you have, okay? So this is one project where I was involved. It was, so we don't build anything as a hardware company, though we are a hardware company. We don't actually make anything. We outsource all of our manufacturing to vendors in Asia and across the world, right? So whenever we go out to sort of submit a code to sort of build anything, we don't know whether we are overpaying for a product to be built, right? So we have a data set we maintain. Okay, it's not a very clean data set. So, and what I did was I sort of created a data set out of multiple different data sources. Okay, created a final data set where I was sort of able to predict what a product should cost based on what we have paid in the past, what a product should cost based on all the variables which sort of impact that cost, right? And we were able to sort of save a lot of, and at least I was able to design something which was able to save a lot of money for my company, right? So this is some background on that. This is something which we have it implemented at work now, at my work now, right? And this is the kind of model which you will eventually get to a point where you'll spit out if you ever get to build a predictive model. So this is one flavor of how I use data science at work, okay? And what this involves is identifying a problem, getting the data together to see as to what variables actually impact the outcome you would want out of that problem, and how do you sort of go about solving it, right? And we are going to learn some of the skills in this course, okay? Another flavor I would want to give you is, I think someone brought up about something about experimental design. I think it was, if I recall, it was Inji Chen. I think you brought up experimental design. Okay, so we're going to cover as to how do you sort of design an experiment, and how do you statistically prove that you have evidence that whatever you have implemented actually works. Okay, so we're going to go through that, and some of these concepts are discussed here. Don't worry about the statistics part yet. We're going to cover a lot of these things as we go along. This is the flavor of a project. Okay, this is what I say Jupyter Notebook. I think I just sort of gave you an overview of a Jupyter Notebook. This is actually a Jupyter Notebook, right? And you can sort of see as to how a project, the eventual project you're going to submit, how it should be sort of, how should it be presented? Okay, how should it be presented and submitted, right? And this is basically goes through step by step of getting the data in, explaining some of the variables, right? So you get the data in, you explain some of these variables, you plot a little bit of statistics, some visualization as to what you're looking at and why you want to sort of do some kind of a manipulation on the data, and then go about explaining as to why something is causing an impact on the outcome variable, right? And we're going to talk about what the input and the output variables are, right? And some basic analysis, and then model building, and then predictions. Okay, and this is a typical format. It doesn't have to be exactly like this. Okay, as long as it sort of helps solve a problem you have sort of framed. Okay. This is another flavor. So I told you that I sort of work in hard engineering. I have a set of people who actually work to model thermal performance of thermal is heat, as to how the device dissipates heat, right? So every time, so this is another use of data science which sort of helps make our life easier at work, or make my life easier. Okay. Now, when I say making money with data, okay, so these are all different flavors of how you use data to sort of improve operations or improve efficiency, which sort of leads to reduce cycle time and hence more money, right? So the underlying tone is always trying to conserve resources, reduce cost, and so, right? So this one is basically, so I have a full-time engineer who actually does a repetitive sort of model building, which is actually not statistical model building, but thermal model building. So everything is done virtually. So he sort of builds a system up and he runs it over and over again, right? So when you do that repetitively, there is not a lot of value add, in the sense that we are taking this very expensive resource, which is an engineer's time, okay, and using it to do something which is very repetitive, right? So what we have built is, we have built a huge data set, right? Huge not from the perspective of big data, but huge from the perspective of enough data, which sort of helps us solve the problem at hand. And the problem at hand is, how do you reduce the simulation cycle time from taking, like, say 3 days to say an hour, okay? And that was the goal, right? The goal was, how do you sort of design a system where you have where you take in a lot of variables which sort of impact the final outcome variable. How do you collect enough data where you have enough data set where you can sort of train a model on, and then be able to use that training, the model you train on, to be able to use that to predict the outcome without actually having to run the simulation over and over again, right? So these are all the stuff you can, if you have time, whenever you get a chance, you can, yes.
What was the case study here? Like what were you measuring the heat from, and why were you trying to predict the temperature? You know, why, it seems like a lot of effort to predict temperature. I'm curious what the case study was.
Yeah. So okay. So let me go explain a little bit. Okay. So if you look at this, this is a typical board. You can open up a laptop. You can open up any system, any hardware system, and you would see something like that. And you will have components attached onto the board, right? So this would be like one of these components, okay? And you can see that you have a chip, okay, which is surrounded by some kind of a plastic, which is connected with wires connecting to this pins, and this connects to the PCB. And this green color is what you have, which is the circuit board, right? So whenever you power on anything, it starts to generate heat, right? There is, when you design a good system, you have a limit to how hot you can have this chip get, right? So what is the outcome variable is the resistance to the flow of heat from this device junction to the ambient, right? You want to make sure that the resistance is what we are calculating. The resistance is influenced by a lot of factors. The factors are, what is the size of this thing? What are the materials involved around this device, which cause the heat to flow out very efficiently or not very efficiently? Is there a fan involved? Are there other neighboring components on this chip which are also dumping heat into the circuit board, right? So you collect all this simulation. You run a lot of these simulations, right? And you collect a lot of data with a lot of factors, which you have sort of built in to this data set, right? And you have this outcome variable, which is the junction to ambient thermal resistance. And now you have this data set where you can sort of train a model on, okay? So now you can sort of say, okay, with this data, when I train a model on this data set, this is the outcome variable, and this is what I can predict. The best model is which minimizes the error in terms of how it predicts, right? And once you have that, now you can go out of sample, right? Now, so we did model building on in-sample data. Now you can go out of sample kind of parameters where you say, okay, if I have this and this and this, what should be my outcome variable, which is the junction to ambient thermal resistance, right? Mm-hmm. So instead of setting it up over and over again, you now have a data set where if you have the parameters within that bound of what we designed that sort of data set in, then you can actually start predicting changes in different variables as to what is the outcome of those changes in variables. So it becomes a very, very interesting and very intuitive tool set as to, if I change this parameter, what is the impact on the outcome variable? If I change this parameter, so it gives you a way to sort of play around with a lot of this. You can do a lot of these parametric studies. Okay.
Yeah. So as opposed to, so like without that model, you'd have to set up 100 different variations of your test and measure the temperature and stuff, and go through that headache. That's really cool.
Exactly. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. Go ahead.
I'm curious. I mean, does Renaissance have their own model for doing this that you guys built, and some other companies their own model and some others as theirs, or is this? I feel like this is done a lot of times. Like, are there standard models for this, or?
Yeah. So I guess in the semiconductor industry space, we have a standard which we abide by as to how you should be measuring this thing, right? So that when a company like Apple, right, let's say they are looking at buying chips from two different vendors, right? So one could be us, one could be someone else, right? Whose product is thermally better, right? So they can sort of judge that, assuming that you are both measured under the same standard conditions, right? And once you have that, so because the standards are the same, we don't have a lot of parameters from the system perspective to sort of change, but you have a lot of internal parameters which can change and which can influence the outcome variable, which is your thermal resistance, right? So these are all these case studies, right? So the reason I'm sort of bringing all this up is that let's dive into a little bit of project. So, okay. So I'm going to by the way, it's about time. The reason it's coming up, it's about time, is because this was supposed to be in another module, but we are sort of moving it up, right? So that I guess when you are, if you're ready, if you already have a data set in mind, I think you can either start exploring or you can at least start looking for what you want to do for that final project. So I'm going to give you some flavors. I already gave you some real flavor, real life flavors. You're free to sort of, I'm going to publish this website in that, in the Slack channel so that you guys have some leads as to how you want to sort of publish your work when we eventually get to a point where you're going to start playing around with data. But before that, let me just run through a little bit of this project outline. Okay. So the goal is, of course, exploring data sets, right? So find interesting patterns in whatever data set you have. Okay. And so there are a lot of the data analytics you would encounter in the real world, right? If you are working in a setting where you have say you're working in your employer setting, a lot of the analytics you will deal with are all going to be very simple, right? They are not going to involve a lot of predictions as much, right? But if you can sort of build that into your project, I think that'll be ideal. And the point is to ask real world questions and see if you can answer through data. Okay, and I'm going to run through some test cases as we go along and how to sort of go about doing that. Okay, and you will probably have to combine. You'll probably have to bring in different data sources, combine different data sets to see whether you can help answer questions based on the problem at hand, right? And of course, attempting to predict the future based on the past would be ideal, but it's not a necessity. Okay, as long as you can use this this format to sort of tell a good story, that is going to be the most important thing, right? And some of the sources, okay, Kaggle is, I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with Kaggle, but this is it used to be an independent company. It's acquired by Google now, right? So it's part of Google. You'll find a lot of data sources here. Data.gov is, of course, very rich. Sometimes you get lost in a lot of the data sets. So I would say ideal situation is if you are surrounded by something at work, even if it's a very simple data set, I think you don't have to have a lot of data. And I'll run through a test case where when we actually start diving into some of the statistical concepts, even a small data set can actually, you can do a lot of work in that, and you can gain a lot of understanding as to what, depending upon what you want to do, right? So these are some of the sources for data. Okay. Some projects you might sort of want to think about, of course, there are always customer acquisition / retention kind of projects where what caused the customer to leave, what caused the customer, what kind of features in a product, in your service, what causes the customer to leave or retain. Okay. Dynamic pricing, okay, that's an interesting field of data science now, where a lot of the Ubers and the Lyfts of the world, as well as all the airlines and hotels, pretty much everyone in the world is, even Disney, okay, is doing dynamic pricing, in the sense that depending upon what time of the year, what time of the day you sort of book and ride, your prices are going to be different, right? Improve operations, reduce cost. I gave you some flavors of that. You can read up and see whether you can think about something like that. Anything to do with the stock and bond markets, okay, that's my personal favorite, and I'm going to sort of use every once in a while, every chance I get, I'm going to use that, because the good part is that you can actually seek data you want, and you can actually go out looking for the data you want, and the problems are more bounded here as opposed to unbounded problems in some other domains. Okay. Anything on the environment, designing better and smarter cities. So since this is part of this IoT related curriculum, I think I'm going to sort of refer you to some IoT related data sets as well, which I haven't, I think, listed it here, but I'm going to put it out on the Slack channel. So maybe you can use that as well, right? A lot of the IoT related things are not only analytics, but you can also build like predictive modeling. So when I say analytics versus modeling, the reason I sort of differentiate between these two domains is analytics is just looking at what is happening now, right? They say, okay, I'm watching this temperature reading and I'm watching this and I'm going to create an upper and lower bound on this temperature reading and see whether the reading is exceeding those bounds or not, right? So that's analytics. Model building is different as to when I bring in this temperature, when I bring in this different parameters, this is what I can predict the weather to be. Okay, so that's more like model building. So that's more complex than just pure analytics, and we're going to cover both flavors. Okay, so it should be, and of course, if you get stuck, Google and Stack Overflow are always there. Okay, especially with respect to getting stuck in terms of coding. Okay, even like I do on and off this this Python, and I also use R, by the way. Okay, so there is another side to this data science, which is you can use Python, and there is another language called R. We are going to be using Python, but you can all if you want to sort of expand your skill set, you can all use. It's always good to have both flavors of this statistical world covered. Okay, and trust me, whatever you're trying to do, someone has tried it before, so it's always good to sort of refer back to that. Okay, and this you can make this as complex as you want. You can actually get pretty deep into this thing. So it is such a vast, and it's a new field. Okay, it's still coming up. It's such a vast field that I think there is at least I feel there is unlimited amount of stuff to learn, right? And that is the interesting part, right? You can just continuously keep on learning and applying. Okay. And whatever we are going to do in this course is mostly going to be applied stuff, right? So even though there will be a little bit of math involved, okay, the math is going to be simplified enough to be more applied than abstract. Okay, so that's a good part about what we're going to be doing.
Wait
here.
A second.
Yes.
You just had an alternative language you can use instead of Python. How do you spell that? O-N? On?
It's R. Okay.
O-A-R-T?
No, R statistical. R statistical.
Oh, R. Okay.
Yeah. The R project for statistical computing. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, and the good part is that if you are downloading this this install, right, it's going to you're going to have R installed, but once you have the R installed, okay, it's going to tell you the instructions as to how to install it. You can actually switch back and forth. Okay, so let me see whether I have a notebook open. Okay, so I have this notebook open. I can change my kernel to R if I want to. Okay. And I can start doing the same thing in R, okay? Okay. So...
May I ask, the slides, is it available in the course work?
I believe they are, right, John? If not, I can make them available on the Slack channel.
All right, thank you.
Or any way you want. Okay, so let me start off with something very, very simple. Okay, Okay, so this is something which I was just preparing yesterday night, right? So this is brand new stuff, okay? So sorry, John, if I have not sort of covered that. Do we have everyone here or, okay. Okay. So we talk about averages a lot, right? So, okay, what is, so there is no such mathematical concept as average, or there is no such thing as average, okay? Mathematically, there is no such thing as average. Average, when we say what is the average of something, right? All we are trying to find out is the central tendency as to, does it give us a good feel of what the mean of that data set is, right? Of the data series is, right? So, for example, we know the arithmetic mean, right? So we know when you add 4 plus 6 plus 8, right? If you want to find a mean, you divide that by 3 because you have 3 instances of that number and you get 6, right? So it's more. So what is the underlying thing you're trying to do? What you're trying to do is you're trying to get to the sum of these 3 numbers by multiplying the mean by 3 by the number of instances of that data series, right? So you have 3 numbers, you're trying to multiply 6 by 3 and you're going to get this sum of these numbers, right? So that's your arithmetic mean, right? And it works pretty well, and you can sort of see that the mean of this, say for example, if you have a series like that, 1, 4, 7, 10, 13, 16, 19, your mean is going to be 10, which it happens to be, and it gives you a good understanding of what the central tendency of the data series is, right? So you sort of know the mean of that data series, right? Now what happens when you have something like this, right? How do you sort of capture the central tendency, or what is the mean in this case, okay? As you can see that this is not linear, okay? So this is, so the difference between the one we saw before versus this is an exponential growth curve, right? And you can see that every number after the first is 3x the previous number, right? And so when you do the arithmetic mean, it sort of gives you this number called 156.1, but that's nowhere close to the true mean, because if you want to look at the central tendency of this particular data series, you would want 27 to be the mean, because that's the number which is the midpoint, okay? So and this is so another flavor of central tendency is median, right? So I'm not sure how many of you guys have dealt with mean, median, and mode and all those things, but let me give you a flavor of that. So let's say 10 people walk into a bar, right? And everyone makes the median income in this country, which is say $60,000, right? So you have 9 of those make $60,000, and the 10th one walks in, and the 10th one happens to be Warren Buffett, okay? And you know his income is way higher than the median income in this country, right? If you take this 10 people, and if you take the average of that, you can say that the average income of this group of 10 people is $10 million a year, right? But that's not a true assessment of the midpoint of the person who is making the median or the average income, right? Because that average, in that scenario, that average is a false representation of what the true situation is with respect to income. So in that situation, you want to rely on median, right? So so depending upon what you pick, whether you pick median or arithmetic mean or geometric mean, it would be more application dependent. So here, when you have an exponential kind of a situation, right, you are better off doing a geometric mean kind of a calculation, okay? And because it is a function of this thing tripling at every instance, right? And this is like an exponential growth curve. You have to, and because there are 7 numbers, you have to take like a square root. You have to take a 7th root because there are 7 instances of that. You have to take a 7th root to get to the true mean, which happens to be 27, which is the midpoint of this this data series, right? So why did I sort of bring this up? Let's say you have, and so this comes very much in the investment realm, right? So let's say you have $10,000 to invest in an interest-bearing account for say 5 years at this different interest rates, right? So you say in the first year you make 8%, second year 5%, third year 9%, 3%, and 4%, right? So you can say, okay, for over this 5 years, my average rate of return, which is the arithmetic mean rate of return, is you add up all this rate of, so 8% is 0.08, 5% is 0.05, and so on. You add up those things, divide by 5, and you get 5.8%, right? And you know the compound interest math, right? So you take the $10,000, multiply that by 5.8%, 1 plus 5.8%. So this is the future value. This is the present value at the start of this time period, which is $10,000, multiplied by the rate of return, average rate of return, and you get this 13,256, right? By the way, everyone is familiar with this compound interest kind of situation, right? Right, Min?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So I'm just giving you a flavor as to when to use what, right? And you see that as the year, but when you do this math, okay, 10,000 times 1.08 becomes 10,800, 10,800 times 1.05 becomes this. You get to this final number. The eventual outcome is not the same as this, right? So there is a difference, okay? Though in this case the difference is minor, but there is a difference, right? The reason is that we should be using here, whenever there is a compound interest, when there is a growth upon growth upon growth involved, okay, we need to be using geometric mean, and that's where the difference is, okay? So if we had this 8%, the same $10,000 invested across 5 years, 1.08 times 1.05, 1.09, and so on. So you get this 1.324067, okay? And you take because you have 5 numbers, you take the 5th root, okay, 5th root. So you're taking the 5th root, and you get 5.775%, and you get you do the same compound interest calculation, and you get the exact value, which is the true value, right? So if you were to use an arithmetic mean, you'll end up coming to the wrong conclusion, okay? So where else can you apply? Okay, so geometric mean is very handy when you're sort of comparing say scores. Okay, so you know when we say let's say you have a restaurant A and restaurant B, right? And you have 2 different avenues where say there is a site called Yelp, okay, which is using a different scoring mechanism, say 1 star to 5 star, and there is another site called say Google, okay, and let's say they are scoring it based on 1 to 100, okay. 100 of course is better, the closer it is to 100 is better, better a restaurant it is, the closer it is to 0, it's not as good a restaurant, right? So you have 2 different scoring mechanisms at 2 different places, right? Similarly, you have a score for restaurant B, okay, 2 different sources, right? Now, you can take the mean of this, okay, divided by 2 because you have two numbers. You know, we all know how to calculate mean, right? And we are, of course, going to cover a lot of these concepts again and again and again, because a lot of the data exploration work is going to involve a lot of these concepts, right? Correlation, covariance, and so, right? So we're going to cover these concepts again and again, right? But if you look at this arithmetic mean, okay, you will see that it's 37.75 for restaurant A and 39 for restaurant B. So you would automatically sort of conclude that restaurant B has a higher score, and that's why it should be a better restaurant than restaurant A, right? But that is wrong, right? Because if you know you have two different units of measurements, that means you will probably have to normalize, right? So one way to normalize this data is convert that to like 100, 0 to 100 kind of a scoring system, right? So every star is say 20 points, right? So 20 points for the first star, 20 points for the second star, and so, right? So if you normalize that, you will see that restaurant A, because you have 4.5 times 20, you're normalizing that.
Your screen went away? Your screen went away? Your screen went away.
Oh,
I
really?
only see you.
Oh, really? Okay, hold on. Share screen, share. By the way, stop me anytime, okay? Don't worry. You can see it?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, perfect, okay. Stop me anytime, ask questions anytime. It's a free form, right? So don't worry. And of course, I will be available on the Slack channel whenever you have a question. Sometimes I tend to sort of assume a lot of things if I'm not hearing anything, and I might actually move a little bit faster because, as I said, there is a lot to cover in the course, and we only have 2 sessions of 1 hour each. So, okay, so you would, so if you normalize it, right, you will see that you have the right sort of picture that restaurant A in theory is actually better than restaurant B. Another way to do that is to take the geometric mean. Okay, geometric mean basically is scale agnostic, right? So it doesn't matter as to what scale you use. You can combine 2 different sources of data and take the mean, and you will get the true picture of what is happening. Okay, and when you take the geometric mean, which is the last part you did or we did, you get that restaurant A is in fact better than restaurant B. Okay, so this is a little bit on mean. We're going to cover a lot. So I might have not given you a very clear picture with an example. We are going to dive a lot deeper into this kind of concepts in the next set of videos, starting Wednesday. Okay. Do you want me to cover anything with respect to any of these things which I already have on the site? Like, do you want me to go into like correlation versus causation kind of things, when to use what? Why don't I go through this thing? Okay, just to make sure, because this is going to be a big aspect of what we are going to do here, right? Because every time you look at a data set, right, we're going to start off with we're trying to understand. Okay, so let me sort of describe as to what is the right way to approach a data science or a data analytics type of problem, especially when you want to sort of build a predictive kind of a model. Okay. First thing, of course, you need to sort of understand as to what business case you are trying to solve, right? So in my case, I gave you some flavors. In your case, it could be something to do, okay, I want to sort of predict, say, a stock market portfolio performance for next year or the next 5 years, right? That could be one problem, okay? And we are going to go through that in the mean variance part when we start working on statistical concepts, but that could be one problem. But anytime you are doing a data science work, you need to have an intuitive understanding of what business or what business problem or engineering problem you're trying to solve, right? Because when you have that understanding is the only time you're going to start collecting the right set of variables which you think are going to impact the outcome variable. Because ultimately what you want to do is you want to have a certain set of inputs, and you're going to use that inputs to sort of predict the output, right? And a lot of the times you will sort of get a data set and you're going to start playing around. The first thing you're going to do is to, okay, what kind of correlations do I see between all these variables which are on the right side of this equation, okay? And we're going to have an equation like, actually, let me cover the predictive part first before I go here, okay? So you're going to have an equation, say something like this, okay? So y, which is the outcome variable, which is on the y-axis, okay? And you have some, this x is a variable which is causing y, okay? This could be anything. This could be, say, a product design, or this could be, okay, ideally this could be, say, the price of a product and the sales volume, okay? Let's say the price of a product, okay? So given a product, okay, the lower the price, the higher the volume, kind of a thing, right? So it could be any of those things where you have some independent variables which are causing your dependent variable to change, to go up and down, right? This is a very crude way to sort of give you a quick overview, but we're going to dive a lot deeper into that. But you're going to have some variables on the right-hand side which are going to cause the left-hand side to go up or down, right? To change, right? So similarly, so basically there's going to be some correlation between the right-hand side to the left-hand side, and every variable, the more variables you include, you'll not only have variables which are going to correlate with the left-hand side, the right-hand side variables with the left-hand side, there is going to be correlation within variables as well, right? So you have to sort of understand that, and we will talk about that, but you need to have a conceptual understanding as to what variables on the right-hand side cause your left-hand side to change. So you cannot just bring in any variable. For example, okay, here, so technically, just because it correlates, you can sort of include that in your model. That doesn't make sense, right? Because if you're trying to predict spending on science, space, and technology, right, you're definitely not going to include suicides by hanging, strangulation, and suffocation as part of your model, right? In theory, you could, because if you look at the correlation coefficient here, okay, it doesn't plot it here, but if you go to this website, they have, he actually puts down a lot of this very funny sort of arbitrary correlations which happens to sort of correlate with whatever you're interested in very, very well, right? But that doesn't mean you should include that as part of your model. So he's trying to sort of depict that in a very humorous way.
What percent of suicides are scientists, though? You know, if it's a percentage, you know, that could work out.
Yeah. Okay. So now okay. So that's a good point. So now you are sort of bringing in some kind of a causality, right? So now you're sort of bringing in, say, hey, if I am trying to sort of predict that, and if I can sort of theorize, and if I can prove statistically that is actually the case, then yes. Okay, so you have to sort of come up with some kind of an evidence stating that whatever your theory is, does it conform statistically with the data you have, and would your predictions hold out when you actually do an out of sample prediction? Because your ultimate goal is that you're going to build a model when you have both sides available, like the X variables on the right-hand side available, as well as the left-hand side, which is the outcome variable available. But ultimately, you're going to get to a point where you will only have the right-hand side variables, okay, and you will have to predict the left-hand side. For example, you could say, I want to predict sales of a product, right? What are the factors which causes sales of that product to go up and down? It could be the economy, it could be the competitive pressures, who else is actually in the market I'm competing with, what kind of pricing do I have for the product? So there are all the different factors which are going to cause your sales volume for the product to go up and down, right? You can. So ultimately, what you want to do, you want to get to a point where you only have the right-hand side variable, and you need to be able to predict the left-hand side variable, right? So that's your ultimate holy grail, and that's why we are all here to learn these tools to sort of be able to help us do that, right? So going back to this predictive versus, let me turn on this light here. Just 1 minute. Give me 1 minute. Okay. Unfortunately, what is happening is in the world of big data, okay, like the likes of Googles and the Facebooks and this kind of companies, they have such vast quantity of data that they can rely on correlation alone, right? So they don't actually have to go out in a lot of those cases. They don't have to go out and actually build a very sophisticated, of course, they might be building a very sophisticated model internally, but because they have such large quantities of data, they can technically use this kind of correlation and make predictions, okay? They don't care whether there is any causality or not, right? So, but in cases where you actually want to have a meaning behind and confidence behind your predictions, you always want to make sure that there is always some kind of a causal relationship between your independent variables, which are the variables which are causing your outcome variable or your dependent variable to change, okay? Now I'm throwing all this independent and dependent variable buzzwords out without actually going through them. But I want to sort of give you that flavor now, because as we move along, it's going to come to you as second nature. Okay, so don't worry if I'm throwing up too many buzzwords now, right? So it depends. Okay, not this depend. Okay, so we need to have that confidence. Okay, that the correlation will reliably occur in the future. Okay, for example, let's say you're Google. Okay, let's say you're working in Google. Okay, and you are building a model based on an immense size data set you have, and you're just relying on correlations, right? So, okay, if I have this set of factors, if it correlates with the outcome variable, I'm going to serve this ad to this customer at this time, okay? Because Google is in the ad business, right? So whenever you log into Google, whenever you search for something, you see ads on the top banner, ads on the side banner. They are all basically thrown at you depending upon what you're looking for. Not only what you're looking for, but also based on what you have done in the past, what your search history is, and so, right? So it is doing all this different assessment of what you have done in the past, and it is throwing you ads based on what. So what is the cost to them of making a mistake? Okay, not very heavy. Okay, they serve you a wrong ad, you don't click on it, big deal. Okay, they have billions of search hits every day, right? So they don't necessarily care whether they serve maybe a few of them wrong ads. Okay, so it doesn't matter to them. So if the risk of acting and being wrong is not high, correlation is fine. Okay, so that is this pretty neat chart. I think I came across this from this BCG paper. Okay, where, let me move this thing around. where, sorry, let me minimize this, okay. So there is this very neat chart I came across. Okay. So what this is, okay, so this is basically act versus not act, okay. Where is my cursor gone? Oops. Give me 1 minute, I'm going to bring back my cursor. Duplicate slideshow, okay. Let me move this on the side, okay. So, so basically, it's basically trying to say, so where, at what point do you act on correlation alone versus at what point causality is sort of important, right? And you have this y and x axis, right? So if risks or cost outweighs benefit, okay, if you can sort of make a correlation, and if you end up being wrong, okay, if the risks or the costs are high, you don't want to rely on correlation alone, okay? But if benefits outweigh costs, okay, then I guess correlation is fine, okay? Because the chance of you going wrong is not that high, okay? So let me put that out in the context of some examples, okay? Let's say you are, and actually that is actually a case where New York City, for example, say their sewer system, right? I think I read it somewhere in the sense that they have the sewer system where they have all these different sensors, okay? Now, since this is an IoT course, okay, so look at the kind of data the sensors are collecting, okay? So they collect, apart from the fact that there are, apart from the fact that they might be detecting a lot of other things, they also detect the water quality or what kind of chemicals are being thrown in the water, right, at a different instance. And if say there is a restaurant who basically throws oil into the sewer system, right, cooked oil, they can actually detect as to where the oil came from, right? So of course there are chances of an error, but for the city, for New York City, to send out an inspector at that site where that oil was being disposed of, the cost is not that way. The benefits basically outweigh cost, right? Because even if they are wrong, right, at least they actually had a chance to sort of go check to make sure that whether the sensor was faulty or whether the restaurant was actually violating the rules, right? So in that case, the benefits outweigh costs. So the correlation in that case is enough. But let's take another example where let's say U.S. Army is testing an image processing software, right? And the software tool, say, basically locates the position of snipers, say, for example, right? Say locates the positions of snipers based on flashes of lights, okay? So if, say, there is a flash of light, the camera or that image processing tool can sort of capture where that flash is coming from. And of course, the Army can take action, right? But that same flash could come out of a camera as well, right? So you could be a tourist out there in the middle of the night and maybe taking a picture, right? And if the software captures that image and if the Army takes an action, there is a huge cost, okay? There's a huge risk for the Army to sort of have this collateral damage, or sorry, not collateral, that's not collateral damage, that's actual damage. So there is a huge risk of having this kind of a situation happen. So in that case, the risk outweighs benefit. So you need to have a lot of multiple layers of causality involved, right? So this is some flavor of correlation versus causation, okay? An interesting thing is that I'm not sure whether all of you guys are aware of how the credit scoring system works, right, in our country, right? So we all have credit scores, and the higher our credit scores, the better a deal we get when we want to access credit, right? So if you want to go out and take a credit card. You'll be easily approved. When you want to go out and get a mortgage, you'll get a better rate based on the credit score. But do you know that the insurance rates for your automobile, right? So whenever you want to go buy an insurance for automotive, regardless of how, of course, there is, of course, that factor of how good or bad a driver you are, but credit score, it has a huge influence on the price you pay for your insurance premium, right? A lot of people don't know, but somehow their models sort of predict that that credit scores translate, a higher credit score translate to a better driver automatically, right? So somehow those kind of things. So in those cases, it could be correlation, or you can sort of prove causality, but it's a gray area, right? But they can use and they can theorize, and you can also use, and you can also theorize, as long as you have a confidence as to why a particular variable should cause a certain outcome. And if you can prove it statistically, which we are going to cover, then you're good to go, right? Not only from the perspective of the project you will be doing, but from the perspective of wherever you're going to apply some of the skills in your real life as well, right? So sometimes, I don't know who is typing this, but that's not me, okay? But so sometimes correlation is enough, but at other times understanding the cause is vital, okay? So the key is to know when it is enough and when it is not, right? So it all depends on the kind of problems you're dealing with. In my case, in the kind of world I sort of work in, causality is very important, right? Because if I'm making a design change, okay, let's say I'm making a design change based on this tool I built, where I'm just relying on correlation without thinking as to why that variable should cause my outcome variable to change, then I can actually make a blunder in implementing the wrong design and end up costing my company a lot of money, and I'll probably get fired, right? So there are those kind of implications in the sense that when you are not using it without a causal relationship, you could actually end up making a mistake. Any questions so far? Am I going too far, too slow?
Just right for me.
Just right for you? Okay. So any feedback, any comments are always welcome. You can send comments one-on-one to me, how to improve my style of teaching. Though I teach, though I've taught seminars and lectures before, I haven't taught a course yet. Okay, this would be my first attempt, but I'm hoping that I impart as much as I know and probably more, because I am also going to be learning at the same time, right? So there is an experimental design question. We are going to sort of devote like an entire course on this running experiments. Okay, so hold off on that. And not only are we going to just cover the fluff part of this lecture, which is already out there, we are also going to dive deep into how to sort of go about it and have confidence in trying to statistically prove as to why your experiment worked and why it worked and why it did work, right? So that's a little bit of it from my end. I think we are running out of time. Actually, we are over time. Okay. So let me know if you have any last minute questions. If not, you guys know where to access that course link, right? That homework link in terms of how to start that Python homework, right? You have that link? Does everyone have this link?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So please, please try to get to it, and some of you might be able to do it quicker. Some of you might take longer, but the deadline is the end of next week. Okay. So, and the reason is that the sooner you get to do it, the faster we can dive into actual data analysis and working with data part of it. Okay. So next week, next lecture, we're going to start covering some statistical stuff. Yeah, some questions?
Yeah, on the module 2, it states Python fundamentals and statistical concepts. Should we have watched those videos by the next class, or?
It would be a good idea to watch it, because worst case, I'm going to cover a lot of those things again in the class. It's a good idea to watch it, because you will probably have questions while you're watching it, which we can sort of clarify in this very short time we have. Like, so we only have like hour and 15 minutes to sort of cover a lot of these things, right? So ideally, if you have some of those concepts, some of those questions ready, you can also ask me offline on the Slack channel, which I can sort of compile and maybe also present it in the class when we meet. But if not, I think it's okay too, but it's just going to take a little bit longer in that case, right? So if you want to get through a lot of the materials which we have, there are more modules coming, by the way. Okay, so this is not the end. Okay, there are more modules coming. So if you want to get to the end, and if you want to cover as much as possible, then it's a good idea to sort of fast track a little bit on your end. I'll fast track it on my end as well.
Is it basically one module per week?
It would be one module per week, yes.
Thank you.
So one module per week, one set of homework per week, and only for the first.
I'm sorry, is it one module per meeting?
One module per week.
Per week?
Yes.
Two classes.
Okay, so there, I think if you add it up, there are probably 11 weeks, and we are at module 8. So that's 8 weeks of material, plus 2 or 3 more coming. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry, go ahead. Any questions? One more thing I will do is I will individually reach out to you, because I still want to gauge as to where everyone is with respect to some of this basic understanding of this concept, right? So if I feel that there is a pretty significant population with some of the basics covered, maybe I can move a little faster. If not, I would like to take it slow, because I want to make sure that whatever you guys do, you do it well, right? And at least you can sort of get to apply it not only at your work, but maybe in your life as well, right? So I'm going to give you this real life example where I can help you sort of understand as to how to sort of invest your money, right? Now, it's not an investment course, but the reason I want to sort of bring this up is because I can cover a lot of statistical concepts while keeping you guys engaged, and talk about something which you can sort of use in your life, and hopefully make you a better investor. Okay, not that I am a good investor as much, because I am also learning, but this is something I compiled using someone's paper. Okay, and his name is Harry Markowitz, and he wrote this paper in 1952, which he eventually won a Nobel Prize for. And it's how many of you guys have heard of something called a modern portfolio theory?
I've heard of it before.
Who's that? Is that Matt?
Yeah, Matt Keating.
Matt Keating. Okay, good. And you have heard of it, or you have actually read about it?
I've read about it. My background is in finance.
Oh, good. Okay, so at least you will probably know a lot of this concept. So when your background is in finance, are you also dealing with a lot of data and statistics and all those things, or just finance?
Definitely dealing with financial data.
I see. Okay, so it's good. So okay, so at least we have you, and you can correct me if I am leading anyone astray. Okay, in the class, right?
Yeah.
But the goal is to have to cover as much and have fun. Okay, so this is I feel this is a lot of fun if you start to work around a lot of this this material, and it will give you some hands-on practice. And the goal is to get away, not to just learn a lot of this math part. Okay, math part I think is dry and dull, but I made it as applied as possible. But the goal in the end is to have fun. Okay, and hopefully, if this course helps you in any way to improve your situation, I think that'll be ideal. Okay. So if any more questions, guys?
Will you be sharing the link to this particular document?
Actually, I think I need to talk to Matt and see how we can. And all these documents are somewhere available, right? But I don't know where to put it. I'll talk to Matt and see how we can logistically make that happen, right? So definitely this document I want you guys to have, because this is almost like a textbook, right? So I wrote it in such a way where even if you were to use this as a reference material, you can use it in many different domains, okay? So you don't have to actually apply to financial data only. Like some of these concepts of, for example, explaining random variables and expected value variance, standard deviation, and so and so, I've collected it in such a way that I not only explain what mean variance optimization is and how to apply it to investment theory, but also how, for example, where was this thing? I think I put it up here, did I? Let me see. Yeah, how Amazon, okay. So there is, so all this science, okay, all this math. So this is all elementary math, okay. But you will see that it has so much power that Amazon and a lot of these online retailers are eating brick and mortar retailers' lunch just because of this simple statistical concept called the fact that variances add, and when you combine a lot of these different, and we are going to go into this, okay? When you add a lot of these demand distributions, okay, so when you add a lot of these demand distributions, which are for individual stores, right, as opposed to for Amazon, when you can combine it to a central distribution center, right? When you add up all this demand distribution, you technically don't have to hold as much inventory in your stock, okay? And inventory, if you are anywhere in retailing, okay, if any one of you are working anywhere in retail, right, inventory is like a nightmare, right? If you can sort of manage to get by holding as little inventory as possible while meeting your customer customer demand, okay, that is the holy grail in retail, right? And this simple fact, if I had known this thing, say 10 years back, I would have bought a lot of Amazon stock, but I was very late in trying to realize this. but I'm just saying that I would have bought Amazon stock because the math before this tells you that you should not be buying individual stocks at all, right? Because companies which are around today will not exist 10 years from now, 20 years from now, and depending upon how you invest. If you're investing for retirement, you don't want to bank too much on buying and speculating in individual stocks. You want to create portfolios which are sensible, diversified, and invest for the long term, right? And we are going to get into some of those concepts as to why individual stock investing is prone to lead you at more times into trouble than to make you money over time. Okay? And plus, we're going to weave a lot of data analysis and statistics into it. Right? Okay, guys, anything? I can go on and on if you guys are all up for it, but I think I'm supposed to end at 8. So are we okay now?
Yep. Thank you.
Okay.
Yep, sure.
Okay.
Thanks.
So see you on Wednesday, guys.
All right. Thanks. a
Yeah,
lot.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Bye, everyone.
Yes.
Great. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.